Hi, welcome. I see we have people starting to join us. Thank you so much for joining us today for this very interesting discussion on women leaving the law. And I am Lisa from the Law Library. Before we turn things over to our speaker for today, Laura Leopard, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. One is that this is a CLE program today with an elimination of bias credit. I will be emailing out the certificates of attendance for that after the program today, once I verify who actually attended in Zoom. So be looking for those certificates by email this afternoon. I also wanted to mention that there is an opportunity to ask your questions today. The way you can do that is to use the Q&A function that you'll see on your screen with two speech bubbles. It's a little icon that you should see there. The Q&A function allows you to post typed questions either using your name or anonymous, whatever you're comfortable with. So please feel free if you have any questions to post them, and hopefully there will be some time at the end for Laura to get to some of those. Finally, I just wanted to mention that you will see a link to a survey at the end, and we always appreciate your feedback, both for the speaker and the library. So thank you in advance if you would take a few minutes to do that. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. I'm so excited to have Laura Leopard from Leopard Solutions. She's coming to us from New York today. So I love the world of Zoom, where we can have people coming in and speaking to us from everywhere. And she is the founder and CEO of Leopard Solutions, a law firm data platform that tracks data about thousands of law firms and corporate legal departments. And her firm's work involved a study that is the subject of today's program on women leaving the law. And that's how we became aware of her, and her company was finding that study and a mention of that study online. And she also began her career as an actress and has another entrepreneurial venture, which is a theater that she started that she's still involved in. So she brings a wealth of experience and interesting career path to us today. And thank you so much for being with us. I'll turn things over to Laura.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I didn't know you were going to bring up the actress thing, but little note, there's a lot of people in the law that have an acting background. So a lot. Well, without further ado, I think we can go ahead and dive into the study. This is a study that we did in early 2021. We started the survey and gathering the data, and it was quite surprising. And it has been, we started with a webinar, we wrote a white paper, and it has really been a hot topic in the law. We have been asked to be on podcasts, we've been asked to talk to groups and share our knowledge of what's going on with women in the law. And I'm so happy to be here to share it with you today. So I'm gonna share my screen and begin the presentation. We began this journey to look at all these numbers and to look at this data when we saw the numbers that came in after 2021. So when we were doing our year-end wrap-up, we ended up with a lot of questions about what happened to women in the law. We saw that women were re-entering the top 200 firm group, big law, at a much lower rate than attorneys who were ethnically diverse. Those were the two things that we tracked. And it was a pretty big divide. It was about 7%. They also had a very large number of unknown, like we just didn't know where they went to. We know they didn't re-enter a top 200 firm, or we would have tracked it. They didn't enter one of our 4,000 law firms that we track, or we would have found them. They didn't enter one of our 8,000 companies that's in our in-house program. We just didn't know where they were. So we began to do some research. We wanted to know where they went and if they left the law entirely or they just left big law. So we decided not only to do a research project, but we also wanted to do a survey to ask women who had left big law why they left. And we started our survey around February in 2021. And here is sort of a top line overview of the results, how many people responded, where they were. And the large portion of them did remain in law, but not in big law. And then they went to various other buckets, what we'll show you in just a moment. But one thing, 75% of those who had left law firms entirely said it was highly unlikely they would return to one. So from the survey, we saw that their age range was 35 to 44 most often, 45 to 54 most often, which is sort of an interesting group. It's sort of that mid-career for women. And as we began to see, that's really when women start to drop out of big law, is in mid-career. We also asked them how many children that they had. Lots of people assumed, I don't know if you remember the term she session that was going on. Well, the she session never really happened. Women weren't exiting their legal jobs because of COVID and having to homeschool. That just wasn't our focus group and not what we saw. There was a good number of them that had no children. There was a lot of them that had two, but most that answered that question did not leave because of COVID and the strains of, homeschooling. Then we asked them, what was your biggest frustrations in working at a law firm? As you can see from the chart, this feeling supported right here, very frustrated about feeling supported at their law firm. They really didn't feel supported enough. Work-life balance, that came in number 2. So these two were the top ones. But just remember, this is very frustrated. This is somewhat frustrated. If you start to group these two, we're going to begin to see a trend. Lack of support, work-life balance, lack of flexibility, and career trajectory. What are your biggest, if you put those two together, that's really what's going to tell you. At the beginning of your career, how important was it for you to make partner? And for most of the women in the survey, it was very important. It was extremely important, very important. That really sort of was the largest share of people who answered the survey. How impactful would the following factors be in motivating you to return? Well, let's look at the biggest one here, more flexible work environment. See that big orange right there? That's very impactful. Now, as we know, there was some working from home during the pandemic. It wasn't available to women before, but it certainly was important, to them before the pandemic and during the pandemic. Now that it's waning and people are being taken back to the office, what they're looking for is that more flexible work environment. Better, more supportive culture, starting to see a theme here. This is relatively new, more opportunities for advancement. And then this again, ability to work from home 100% of the time, which of course they could do during COVID. And some of that is changing now that things are trying to get back to normal. How much of an impact in leaving your law firm did the following factors have? Look at all these big purple stripes. That's the one that's very, very impactful, right? Current job satisfaction. Didn't have it. Lack of flexibility. They didn't feel they had it. Work-life balance. It wasn't good. Career trajectory. And then, of course, the desire to make a career change. But honestly, the desire to make a career change could have come from all of these factors. Now we're going to look at some of our data. So we at the time of this, the time this chart was put together, we really were looking at about 4,500 firms. So we really sort of stuck to the top 200 in order to have consistent reporting, because we're adding firms in our database all the time. So at the time this report came out, this is what we had. We had 2019, 2020, and 2021. And as you can see, there's parity, laterals by gender. We've got women always fewer than men, right? There is no parity necessarily on the lateral stage, but this is associates. So the difference is relatively small, right? 50% of the associates in the top 200 are already women. They're already women, but men have an edge in lateral recruitment. Even though in some years it's small, like here, there is a difference in other years. So they have an edge. 2020 was that strange year. Very few laterals were hired at all, right? But if you look at 2019, the gap is much wider than for 2021. We also know that laterals are promoted to partner at a larger rate than those who come in as an entry level. So if you are not hiring women laterals, it just continues to contribute to the uneven playing field that they see. Partner laterals by gender. Well, there are fewer women partners. Yes, we know that. It's about 27%, I think, are women in the partner area. But the disparity in these hiring numbers really does speak for itself. Firms now tend to be hiring more partners by lateral hiring instead of promoting those entry-level folks. So getting parity on the partner lateral area is going to be really important for women to help get those numbers up. But this really speaks, the numbers just speak for themselves. Now we're talking about promotion rates, right? So I did drop in the 2022 rates because it actually was a cheerier story than looking at 2019, 20, and 21. So we really didn't see the needle moving very much in those years, right? But it actually grew for the first time in several years. It actually went up about 1 percentage point. I mean, there's still a long way to go, but at least it's not going down or staying stagnant. There still is wide disparity, but at least that's a slight nudge in the right direction. So that's good. So we know that promotions to partners still lag for women, even though they have made more progress than those in other underrepresented groups. There's a lot of roadblocks, for women that just don't exist for their male counterparts, just lack of opportunity, as we heard. There's some unconscious bias. There's a lack of acknowledgement for success. Those are just a few to mention. We've also seen that women are dropping out in mid-career in greater numbers than men. Women are being encouraged, early on in their career, but that doesn't seem to happen mid-career and later. Firms are hiring more women than men from law school. Women also outnumber them on campus, so that could be one reason why they're hiring more women. But that support that should be there for them in their mid-career range is really lacking. And if we are to see parity in the upper levels of law firms, we need to look at some structural changes. So, we know, and we said that women represent about 50% of the associates within the top 200 firms. There's pretty much parity there. But after they left, so now we're going to look at all the exits, everyone who left a top 200 firm, and just to see where they went after they left. So men re-entered top 200 firms 4% more than their female associates. And, as we saw, firms are hiring more women than men from law school. So it's just worth noting that, 39.35% of male associates went to another top 200 firm. So think about the number on the opposite side of that. 60% of male associates that left a top 200 firm didn't return to one. 64% of female associates that left a top 200 firm didn't return to one. So those should be concerning statistics. But for women, they're still not faring as well as they should within big law. And we're going to start to look at some reasons why. So if we just look at women's exits, by age, right? These charts look remarkably similar until you reach 2021. And then the number of younger women jumped considerably while the rest remained the same. So the people that re-entered a top 200 firm, it's the young women that are going back to a top 200 firm. I read this article a while ago, and it distills some of the issues beautifully that women face in law, and specifically in big law. And we have identified about 11 ways that law firms can combat the issues for women in the workplace. But this is a really wonderful article that really gets down to point by point where they see a real roadblock for women, growing in the law. And this article looked at 4 different industries. They looked at law, higher education, faith-based nonprofits, and healthcare. And they found that law was the most challenging environment for women. Workplace harassment, the billable hour, and more, of course, made the law a much more challenging field. So that's a little concerning, right? Out of those 4 big industries, law is the one where women face, greater hardships and roadblocks to success. And getting ready for today, I noticed these stories. All of these stories came out today. So if anyone questions that bias is not alive and well, these 2 stories can rebut that quite successfully. The first one from the Daily Mail, this is a law firm that specializes in workplace and family law. And they had one of their associates, and you can go on LinkedIn, it's all over LinkedIn. You can go on LinkedIn and see the text that they sent an associate who was returning from maternity leave. It was awful. It was crass. It was demeaning. He did lose his job. But the fact that a firm that specializes in workplace law, that this could happen, just shows you how embedded all of this can be in the culture. And in Missouri, if you're a woman lawmaker, elected to state Congress, you can't wear a sleeveless dress. We'll just leave that there. And this was in the New York Times this morning. Pay disparity is real across the country and within the legal industry, right? And in this article this morning, it said that women earned 83% of what men did that year. 83%. Now, salary transparency is a real hot topic right now. We do have states that have now passed laws that require salary to be put on any job opening, which should really help with job transparency. But there is a pay disparity upon men and women in law firms, and we'll start to look at how we can combat some of this. As we looked at the survey results, the comments that they had and that they posted on the result were just thoroughly depressing. And I knew if we were going to share these comments, if we were going to share the results of the survey, we really had to find a balance, because we couldn't come out with this because it was just so depressing. So we searched and interviewed women who had actually succeeded in big law. And we also researched article after article on what firms could do to actually combat this problem. And we found 11 things that we think can really make a difference, and some real life examples of how they can work. How many women have had men talk over them or repeat what they just said and claim an idea for their own? These are daily microaggressions that really must be addressed by the person in charge who is in the room. If they see men interrupting, undermining, heaping, you know what that is? It's rewording a point raised by a female colleague. They really must address that behavior and put an end to it right then. It undermines confidence, and it just leads to women being less vocal. And what we see in practice is that it requires strategy, thinking, and being deliberate about solving the problem. It's not going to be solved by itself. It really requires techniques and partners to work to solve the problem. Linda Bennett over at Lowenstein talked about using the amplification strategy. In the Obama administration, women noticed that men were speaking over women in all their meetings, and in some cases, repeating an idea that a woman had voiced earlier and taking credit for it. So the women banded together to make sure that women were being heard. So when they heard a man interrupting a woman, they would politely stop him and ask him to let the woman finish making her point. And they would also point out when a man sort of co-opted an idea that a woman had put forward earlier in the meeting. So they have adopted that technique at Lowenstein to make sure that the women know they have a safe place to speak and be heard. How do you succeed in a law firm? You stack up those billable hours. You build a whole roster of clients. If women do not receive the same amount of opportunities as offered to their male colleagues, how do they win with that competition? How can they possibly win when that deck is stacked against them? For Lowenstein, Elaine Hughes said that they created a centralized assignment database where associates put in their hours, whatever they're working on and what they would like to work on. They also measure the partners that they're working with so they know who has access to every key partner. It helps at assignment time so you know who has not received the same opportunities as other people on the staff. Now this can work not only for women, but any other underrepresented group. For Christy Tosh Kreider at Baker Donaldson, it's the Women's Initiative. They have a firm leader in every office who advocates for women to be present, to be on pitch teams and more. It is really a dedicated strategy to include women at all levels. Women need to be visible. They need to be visible, and they need to be visible in leadership positions. When women associates see a woman in charge of a practice or in charge on the hiring committee or as a managing partner at the firm, it really shows them what is possible. But just as important, having women in leadership roles, having women in leadership that can share their concerns and perspectives can really be crucial at times. How can an all-male leadership make proper decisions for what female employees need without actually hearing from them what they want, what they truly need, not just what they think they need? I mean, the answer is they can't. And just because they're making decisions that they think are in the interest of women without input from women, it can really blow up in their face. This seems so simple. I know it's not, but it seems so simple. If you don't want sexism to be a toxic substance in your firm culture, you can end it. It's a choice, but you must be deliberate and persistent. Sexism should not be tolerated, both obvious and subtle. It can kill your culture. The same with racism, right? And the unconscious biases that accompany it. A firm that no longer tolerates that behavior by enforcing their own rules and punishing those who cross the line, yes, even those big money makers, it's going to kill their culture. It's if they don't do it, and their culture will be for the better if they do. Attrition can kill your bottom line. If you care about your profits, you should care about attrition because it steals millions from your profit line each and every year. If there is a behavior at work that causes people to leave because they don't feel supported or safe, you're really working against your primary goal. A firm must be willing to make some tough decisions to ensure that they have created a positive workplace. Equality will never be a reality unless leadership recognizes that it's not currently equal. While women are no longer considered to be their husband's property, and we're free to work and we own property and vote, they're not equal in the workplace in 2022 or 2023. Men are promoted at a higher rate, male laterals are hired at a larger rate, and males dominate the partner ranks in big law. And there's just no denying that. We all hold unconscious biases. And being aware of them doesn't solve the problem. It takes a strategy and consistent pressure to overcome them. First, you must recognize that it's real. And only then can you work to overcome overt and unconscious bias. At Baker Donaldson, they train people who were in positions of leadership in how to best advance women and beat that unconscious bias problem. They say 100% of the time, the people that they talk to welcome it because they want to keep an important part of their talent pool. They don't want that attrition on their firm's books. Now, while companies shouldn't really intervene directly in an employee's life, they should recognize inequality and offer ways to minimize the burden, whether that's helping women stay connected and developing their skills while they're on maternity leave, or facilitating their return to work. Offering equal paternity care is really a no-brainer because then it normalizes the leave. When both men and women take it, they're taking off time to care for a new child, there really could be less of a stigma in taking that time off for women. Remote work was not possible. It wasn't possible in most law firms until the pandemic, right? There's no way that was going to happen. Women had asked for it for years, but it was never anything the firms were willing to do. You know, they had all kinds of reasons not to. It was a security problem. It was this, it was that. You know, until they were forced to do it, they were really dead set against people working remotely and working from home. But suddenly, the impossible was possible. And men and women were both working remotely. And now it's going to be very difficult to take that away, as we have seen. Women especially benefit from this practice, and firms that continue to allow remote work will see a big benefit with happier and still very productive attorneys. You know, flex time could help women balance work life much more easily. It allows both men and women to take the time off they need during a crisis or a long-term situation. Childcare at work, time off for a sick relative, those types of perks really should be shared across the board, and men should be encouraged to take it as needed. Women have been asking for flex time for years. It will allow women to continue to work and deliver good work while balancing what they need to balance at home. Encourage partners to take flex time. Encourage partners to take flex time, because when a partner takes flex time, it lets everyone else know that it's okay for them to take it. Everyone has emergencies, right? So if everyone's allowed to take time off during an emergency, then everyone's going to be fine with doing it, no matter what their title. Flex time could allow you to keep valuable employees that you might otherwise lose. Molly Singer at Gibson Dunn felt those home pressures and decided to go on flex time back in 2016, long before the pandemic hit. They had flex time. They already had a program in place, and she felt very comfortable doing it. She made partner while on flex time, and she sees others reach that peak year after year who are on that same program. So it is possible. Working behind the scenes, rarely taking credit for work product, never recognized for their contribution. Do you know any men like that? Yeah, probably not. If you do, the number's small, but I'm sure you know a few women in that position. You know, we have been taught we've been taught not to do it. We have been notoriously bad about blowing our own horn. We've been taught it's not ladylike. We really have to have help for women to be recognized for the good work that they do. If they are reticent to blow their own horn, have someone else bring it up in a meeting. Have someone else tell their superior how hard and how great they are at their job, or any successes that they have. That should make it easier going forward for women to acknowledge their success on their own, but they're going to have help to get there. Linda Bennett from Lowenstein shared this. Moving the needle has to be more than words, and that accountability is important to clients. So this also can kick in. The power structure in a law firm is often who has the biggest book of business, right? Forcing firms to look carefully at not only who had the initial connection of the work, but to who is actually doing the work today. That could really help. A team works on an account, not just the partner who originated the business. So looking at the work within with a team approach, that could really help. Clients are now pushing for the credit to be properly attributed, right? So now you've got client pressures coming in, and they are the ones that want to see it. And in some cases, you've got women in charge at these companies, and they are deciding what firm to work with. And if they don't see the correct attribution was made, it can cause them to move on to another firm. This can help move the needle in the right direction. At McKenzie Company, when considering promotions, they said men are evaluated based on potential, while women are evaluated based on performance. These unequal standards lead to the extremely skewed management structure that we see in most workplaces, not just law, in most workplaces, where entry-level ranks are split 50-50, men, women, but management ranks are dominated by men. The number one thing companies can do to advance gender equality is to change the way that they evaluate women for promotions, ensuring that they're on a level playing field. Christy Tosh-Kreider at Baker Donaldson told us a program they put in place to help women make equity partner. You know, it's a big goal at their firm, and it's a big goal for these women, and they work hard to attain it. They support the women within the program with services, and they meet every other month to talk about topics critical to earning equity ownership. And they discuss with them how to put them in place in their practice, right? How they can use all of these different tools to get to that next level. They have a plan in place, and they are actually increasing their female equity shareholders year over year. They have a plan. They stuck to the plan, and it's paying off. According to the article, Walking Out the Door, hiring more women laterals would really help to level the playing field. They say that given the fact that many firms, more partners are hired laterally than are promoted internally, it is critical that law firms ask to focus on identifying potential women lateral candidates, including searching for qualified candidates out of existing networks. I mean, we can see from the slide that while the numbers of men and women associates are in a virtual dead heat, right? They hired more men laterals than women. At Baker Donaldson, they have a robust women's initiative, and Christy told us she immediately spoke with the firm's lateral recruitment officer about all the things that the firm does to advance women. She wants to be ready, because when women start voting with their feet and moving to a new home, they want them to go to Baker Donaldson. All firms are not created equal. Neither are all mentorship programs or women's programs. There's a big difference between firms that just check a box because they're supposed to, and the ones that really work. A solid mentorship program can make a huge difference in any associate's chance of success. They can help create benchmarks and celebrate wins, as well as provide consistency and structure. They are a sounding board, a cheering squad, and a rock at the firm for the mentee. And the mentor may find that he or she becomes a better leader through the process. As Molly Singer from Baker Donaldson put it, you get to know people that you otherwise would never get to know. And thankfully, there is no such thing as a stupid question. That gives associates confidence to ask questions and seek help without fear of being ridiculed. Not all mentorship programs are creating equal, however. Assigning a mentor just to check a box is really not going to produce the results that you want. A plan, a schedule, and structure is needed for the program to be a success. At Baker Donaldson, they have two programs. One is a firm-wide mentor program, and the other is with members of the Women's Initiative program. And that starts when you begin at the firm and is there until the day you retire. It is really a pretty inspiring program that gives women in law a place to grow, seek answers, get support, and find a hand to lift them up when they need it. They support the program by supplying monthly material for them to go over to help spawn discussions and to keep it growing and alive. These are the 11 ways that firms can work to level that playing field and give women a more equal opportunity. By the way, most of these can be applied to supporting those who are ethnically diverse, other underrepresented groups as well. Many of their problems are really incredibly similar. And let's not forget this. I'm going to say it again. Nearly 61% of men who leave a top 200 firm do not return to a top 200 firm. A robust mentorship program and some of these steps that we talked about today might have helped them as well. Solutions must be deliberate and persistent. It has to be more than just clients requesting, demanding change. You know, if a firm truly wants diversity, gender or ethnically diverse groups, both, I mean, they really do have to have the will to do it. It isn't just a hiring problem. It's an onboarding problem, a mentorship problem, an opportunity problem. All of those issues require thought, will, and an ongoing effort. You know, the world around us has changed, including law firms. Their embrace of remote work has changed much within the industry, but young people are demanding change. Attorneys are voting with their feet, and they're leaving the top 200 grind and moving into in-house or government positions, or even just firms under the top 200 where the grind is not the same. The hiring continues, the churn keeps going, but at what cost? You know, the question that's here in bold, why did I even want to be a partner? This question should strike every managing partner in the heart. Why did I even want to be a partner? More and more associates are asking that same question. You know, I spoke with a managing partner of a top 200 firm last spring, and he said, "Do you know what keeps me up at night? I'm wondering if I'm going to have enough partners to run this firm in a few years." Doing the right thing by your employees is the right thing. Standing up against bias, racism, and sexism in your workplace is the right thing. Adjusting to the world around you, you know, adjusting to the world around law firms during COVID saved them. They moved to Zoom meetings, Zoom depositions, Zoom litigation, remote work, and it happened because it was forced to happen. Not having the partners to run their firm could happen, and it could force change again. The road to partnership grows longer each and every year. It's kind of astounding, isn't it? In 2012, for a lateral, it took 965 days to become a partner. Now it takes 1,622, but that is nothing compared to people hired as an entry level who came into those firms. So this is the road to partnership. It's increased 68% over time. The road to partnership is harder, it's longer, and you've got a lot of people questioning if it's worth it. That might be time to make some changes. We have this is a calculator. This is like an online calculator. So you can use it to just figure out what associate attrition costs a firm. You know, it's free. The result can be rather eye-popping once you learn how much money you're losing when people walk out your door. This is an ROI report in our Leopard Business Intelligence Suite. This is the cost of attrition at a top 200 firm. Their costs hit a high in 2018 with over $20 million in losses for recruitment. They only had 52% success. Imagine what adding all that money to your profit column would do. So attrition is real and its costs are real. There are now, and there will be, more alternatives to the traditional law firm model. Disruptors are just popping up everywhere. Ones that allow for different billing models, working from home, flex time, and other opportunities. They are growing. And firms will need to take steps to compete for talent in a whole new environment. The pandemic changed more than most realize, and workers have found their voice. Women can be a big part of their growth and success if they're helped to succeed. It only takes the will to do it. And that's our presentation.
So I'm just going to pop back in and encourage anyone who's here to ask your questions. We've got plenty of time for questions or even just comments. What has been your experience? Did any of this resonate with you, or any of you struggling with any of these issues? And again, you don't have to give your name. If you want to use our Q&A function here in Zoom, you can post your questions anonymously. And I see somebody raise their hand. You know, we don't have any ability to unmute you in the webinar format. So please just, if you could put your question or comment in Q&A, then we will be able to address it. While we're waiting to see what everyone has to say, I wanted to ask you a couple of things. One would be, do you have any advice for anyone maybe who's just starting out or looking for career change about how do you find the employers that are embracing these concepts you talked about or creating these more equitable work environments? You know, do you have any tips on how to research companies or where to find the right fit for yourself if you're looking for that?
Well, we have a program that helps with that. We have several law school clients where people can go in and get information about different law firms. But I would definitely say, look over a law firm website. And from a website, you should be able to tell a good deal about what they have in place. You know, there's information on the Baker Donaldson website. And I would actually reach out to people at the firm if possible, and to see if they might be willing to give you some information. If you are, let's say you're a woman, you would love to join that firm, you have interest in litigation or IP, you can reach out to someone that's already in that practice and see what they would recommend, or if they would recommend their firm, or just ask what women's initiatives they have at the firm. And I think you can do that just by contacting the recruiting coordinator at the firm. Just ask them the questions. Those are the people that generally are trying to sell their firm, right? So if they have any good information for you, that recruiting and career office should be able to give it to you. But it's a direct question. What women's initiatives do you have at your firm? What is the percentage of women partners at your firm? What they do is more important than what they say. So taking a good look at their website and see who they hire and who they have working in different practices can really give you a good idea of what your chances are going to be like.
I would imagine if firms are, creating programs for more equity, like mentoring programs, that they're transparent about it. Maybe you can even find that out by looking at their website. So I do see a couple of questions here. Oh. Great. So here's one from an anonymous attendee. In litigation, even beyond explicit and implicit bias in my own law firm, I have been highly discouraged by explicit, implicit bias in opposing counsel and on the bench. It is very difficult to manage and almost impossible to change. Do you have any insight on that problem and what is happening, if anything, to fix it? And I identify with that also from when I was practicing.
Yeah, this is not the first time that we've heard that at all. I don't, and even for the law firms that we spoke to, trying to find out what they can do and how they support women, this was also a problem that they brought up numerous times. That is unconscious or conscious bias coming from the bench. And that's not something a law firm can necessarily do much about. It all depends on what strategies that they have, at the firm. There's going to be other women at the firm that has dealt with this judge before. Mm-hmm. So that would be the first person I would talk to and say, how did he treat you? What did you do? If he treats you better than me, what can I possibly do? And then, of course, if it's a terrible problem, there are authorities you can go to report the judge. But for the most part, it's just bias at work in the courtroom. I don't have an answer for that, unfortunately, but maybe it's something we'll look into.
Well, also, I would think if it's something really egregious involving opposing counsel, sometimes the state bar, is a place you can go, depending on what the issue is and how severe it is.
Yeah.
But there are ethical standards that relate to civility.
Yes, but just 2 weeks ago, they had a U.S. congressman call an anchor on CNN, young lady. Pardon me, young lady. So it's definitely there, but I think calling it out at times could be helpful too. You can call him young man. See how he feels about that.
So here's a comment. Let women speak. This was a constant throughout in my career, men taking credit for my ideas and heap-eating. I've never heard that one before. Okay. Do you have any more detailed suggestions to address this issue?
Well, I love the Lowenstein solution where they had the women band together to help each other. There were some people that we talked to that had issue with that and said, oh, we would never do that. But we would go to the partner in charge after that meeting and say, this is what happened and I'm not okay with that. I had that idea and then he, brought it up later in the meeting. And I just want you to know that's a problem for me. And normally they would take steps to try to amend it. Trying to end it right there in the meeting really is up to sort of the person in charge. I know it's, you don't want to start a fist fight. You don't want to start, talking over the gentleman that talked over you. It's finding an ally in the room might also be helpful. And it doesn't have to be a woman, right? It could just be any ally in the room that could speak up for you and say, let Marcia finish her thought, or that's a great idea, Bill. And I thought so when Marcia said it 10 minutes ago. Find an ally, because that would be more powerful than you saying something for yourself, I think, in that particular instance.
Yeah, I thought those sounded like really good techniques as well. If anyone's struggling with that, kind of try to get together with some of your colleagues and agree to use those techniques in meetings. Another question from an anonymous attendee. Have you conducted any research on the amount of billable hours that would better support women? I find that it's a struggle to meet 8 billable hours a day and still have a life, and I don't have children yet. Yes.
The billable hour, it's like a dinosaur roaming the earth right now. Up until 25 years ago, the billable hour was not the law of the land. There were multiple ways to bill, right? The billable hour is really an enemy of the firm, even though they don't see it yet. And there are more and more firms, not big law yet, but there are more and more firms that are adopting alternative fee solutions. And there are more and more firms like the ones I showed at the end of the presentation that do all of that. It's 100% remote. All of the fee arrangements are incredibly different. There's some that have a subscription service where a client buys a subscription so they know what their legal bill is going to be at the end of the year. There's other flexible, arrangements, just to not do the billable hour. If that's what you're looking for, there's more and more firms that are doing that. I was at a conference in Chicago last year at a mid-sized firm conference, and there were several firms that had discovered that moving to more flexible billing arrangements was actually a gold mine for them. Clients loved it, their attorneys loved it, their attrition was less. So there are firms out there that are choosing not to do the billable hour. And those would, I would definitely, if I was in that position, I would definitely be looking at them.
So here's a comment. It has also been important for me to acknowledge and discuss with other women lawyers the fact that the conflictual nature of litigation itself challenged my conditioning and created internal challenges to the practice. I think we are too reluctant to discuss this.
Yeah, that's very true. For years, I have been saying every firm should send every single litigator to acting class, every single one. The first thing you have to understand, I think, and this is just me talking to you, you heard I had an acting background, right? Is that it's not you up there fighting. You are representing someone and you're fighting for them. And if you look at that as sort of an outside character that you're performing, it may make it easier for you to do. It's not you doing it. It's your character that's up there doing it. And like, as I said before, there really are a lot of people in law with a theater background. And a lot of them are litigators, which really gives them a leg up. So if if I were you, I would really suggest looking for some help, whether it's going to a class about presentation or it's going to an acting class. I understand it's not the presenting, it's the agitating, right? It's the fight. But there are ways around it, and practice is one of them. So going to some acting classes, and you may think it's silly, but it actually could be a great tool to help you get over that hurdle.
You're reminding me that at my law school in trial skills, we studied method acting and talked about how it can be incorporated into trial work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, acting can teach you a lot of things. It can also help you read a room, can do all kinds of things for you. So
yeah, fake it till you make it. If you're not confident. Yeah.
That's right.
Here's a question from an anonymous attendee. How many lateral moves does an attorney typically make before they're promoted to partner? Do they make a first move after a year or longer?
Well, there's sort of like a magic number in the sense that if you move too much, they're not going to invest in you, right? So you can't move too much, or they're not going to think you're going to stay, because partners do lateral out, and it's a huge investment for a firm to bring on a lateral partner. I would say if moving into a firm where you would like to be for the rest of your career is about your third lateral move, they would know that you're a safe bet. Back in the day, there were very few lateral moves. This is really something new within the last 17 years, something like that. The number of lateral hires has gone up and up and up. And that means it's become more normal for people to exit a firm and enter another one. So the fact that you lateral 6 times, that could be a problem. They call you a serial mover, and that might dim your chances to move into another firm. And as we can see, unfortunately, there are just not as many women lateral partners. So lateraling as an associate and in a firm where you see an easier path to partnership, that might be more wise. They just don't seek out that many women lateral partners, at least not yet. But, staying in and not dropping out, getting more experience, working on that book of business. Some of the women that we talked to at these law firms said, many times associates get very surprised that they're supposed to have a book of business, right? One day they wake up and I'm working hard, I'm working all these hours, but they have no book, they have no business. And that's where that mentorship stepped in and said, you really have to start, cultivating clients on your own. So if you're even if you're lateraling your way to your top, or your odds are better, certainly, you still have to work on that business side of law and build that business. The more business that you have, the more attractive that you are. But lateral in as an associate at a firm where you have an eye on the partnership, that actually might be a better route, because right now the number of female partners, lateraling from one firm to another are relatively low.
So another question from Cheryl: how do you suggest handling a female superior supervisor who takes credit for your work? So I think that's a good point. Sometimes it's women undermining other women in these scenarios. And is there anything about that changes the way you handle it?
Well, that's a tough one, right? That's a tough one. To be honest with you, I really don't know how to answer that. There's a lot of dynamics, and it's different in every firm. If you had a mentor in the firm where you're working, I would certainly talk to my mentor about it. If it persists and is a big problem, now we're talking credit attribution, right? You're not getting attributed for the work that you do. You're not getting attributed for your contribution. That's really an HR problem. And that's something that the firm should really pay attention to. And as I said before, more and more people are paying attention to that attribution. So it would be something to report. If you have a mentor, yes. If you have other allies at the firm that are in firm leadership, talk with them as well. But that's a tough one, depending upon your situation in the firm that you're working at. And I'm sorry. sometimes. It's tough being a woman, and it's even harder when you have issues coming from other women at your firm.
Yeah. Well, all right, we're getting close to the end of our time. So any last minute questions, please post them. And Laura, I didn't know if you had any parting words. I think, we're advocates in this profession. Sometimes we need to be our own advocates, and, wondered if you had any parting advice for everybody.
Well, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. And don't think that, blowing your own horn is rude and unladylike. There's a way to do it right. I'm sure you'll figure it out. But the world is changing. And as the world changes, there will be better and more opportunities for women. I found that by starting my own business. So that was my way to sit in the top spot. You'll find your own path. And if any of you are interested to know what's going on in the legal profession, we do have a webinar coming up on Tuesday about the state of the industry, as of 2022, everything that happened in the past year. But I wish you all much success. And if you want to contact me, you can email me at laura@leopardsolutions.com, and I'll be happy to respond and send any information to you that you need.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.